You're watching BCTV. We're all about Brantford. You're watching BCTV, Brantford Government Television, a service of Brantford Community Television. This program is brought to you in part through the support of the town of Brantford.
Then Chuck Anders, Chair, will call the meeting of the Brantford Planning and Zoning Commission to order. It's Thursday, May 7th, 2020. I will introduce members of the commission and staff. When I say your name, please state your name and indicate you are here. Again, anyone, one of the rules for this Zoom meetings and under the executive orders issued by the governor for these meetings, you have to state your name before you speak. So we got to remember, every one of us, to do that. So with that, I'll go through the list. John Lust, are you here?
John Lust is here.
Joe Chadwick, are you here?
Joe Chadwick, present.
Joe Vayuso, are you here?
Joe Vayuso here.
Marcy Pelusi, are you here?
Marcy Pelusi here.
Okay, Chuck Anderson, I'm chair. And our staff this evening, Harry Smith, are you here?
I am here, finally.
Caitlin Piazza, our assistant planner, are you here?
I'm here.
And our clerk recording secretary is Michelle Martin. Michelle, are you here?
Yes, Michelle Martin here.
Okay. We do have one public hearing scheduled for this evening, but before we get into that and read the notices, I'm going to turn it over to either Caitlin or Harry to review just any general procedures for the Zoom meeting that you would like to remind us of before we get going.
Okay. Caitlin, you want to take that?
Sure. I don't have my slide list up this time, but just in general, this meeting is being recorded. Nobody's required to have their video on. If you want to participate during the public hearing portion of this meeting, you have two options. If you hover your cursor over the bottom of the screen, there will be a chat button. If you press that, you can choose who you send the chat to. That should be everyone, and you can submit a question that way. You also have the option to raise your hand, which you do by hovering your cursor at the bottom, manage participants.
Yeah.
What's the nicest day next week?
Okay. And at the bottom of the screen, there should be an option to raise your hand. Now, if you're dialing in by phone,
Here, I'll show you.
R9, and the same thing can happen. It will raise your hand and alert the host. Also, if you're not speaking, could mute your microphone, which is, again, you hover at the bottom of the screen and all the way to your left will be a microphone icon, and you want to press mute. And that's it.
Thank you, Caitlin. We have one public hearing scheduled for this evening. Do we have a legal notice to read, Harry, or did we already read that at a prior meeting? This is a continuation, so we don't need to do that.
That was read at a prior meeting, so we do not need to do that.
Okay. So then we'll turn to our agenda. If you have that, our agenda, we have one public hearing item, and that is A. Secondino and Son, Bittersweet Partners, LLC, Alteria Holdings, 779-803 East Main Street and 21 Sycamore Way, special exception for a laboratory office. Is the applicant, and by the way, for our public hearings, we'll follow a normal procedure, which is that the applicant will go first, make its presentation, applicant and any experts, comments. After that, we turn it over for comments by staff and questions from the commission. Then we open it up to the public again, ask everyone to identify themselves before they speak. Then we turn it over back to the applicant and for any responsive comments, and we may or may not close the public hearing. For this item number 1, I understand there is a notice issue and it's likely to be continued, but I will turn it over for the applicant and staff is the applicant is there someone here on behalf of the applicant for that one?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Chris Gagnon. I'm a civil engineer, licensed here in Connecticut. I work with BL companies. We're out of 355 Research Parkway in Meriden, Connecticut. And I am here representing the applicant. The applicant is also on the line, Mr. Al Secondino. He and I were in purgatory over there on the other meeting for a little bit, but we've now made our way over and are happy to present this project to you. So yes, I'm here.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gagnon. Chuck Andrews, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Gagnon. Do you, just so I'm aware, and I believe there was a question of the notice to abutters. I understand that the original notice went out saying we're going to have a meeting at Town Hall, which didn't happen. Now we've suspended that, and there's a different way of doing that, of actually notifying the abutters for the special permit application, telling them that it's a Zoom meeting and how to get onto it as opposed to just showing up at Town Hall in March. Do you want to proceed this evening, or would you rather wait until we do the full thing, or how would you like to proceed?
I would love to be able to get the ball rolling with the commission. To specifically answer your question about the notification, we did indeed send out abutters notifications per the requirements of the regulation. Coincidentally, unfortunately, poor timing, whatever it was, the meeting we were supposed to be on was the very last meeting that was held face-to-face. Due to circumstances, we are now here on a Zoom meeting. However, in between that time and now, we did not send out a supplementary notice indicating that that this was going to be a Zoom meeting. Harry and I had a number of emails corresponding back and forth with one another at the time when the meetings in beginning of April were going from the fire department meetings to now, and there wasn't any direction at that time that we needed to renotice this meeting. So in what I would respectfully like to ask is to be able to get this kicked off. It's been in your folks' hands for a long time. The bulk of the file and documentation has been at Town Hall and online for a number of months. So even without the notification telling us to jump on a Zoom meeting, I believe that there has been ample opportunity to review the documentation that has been provided for this project. And then if we kick it off today and I'm allowed to get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on here, we would be willing to hold the public hearing open and then provide an additional notice just for some belts and suspenders indicating that the hearing is held open and is continued to, I think it's the 21st. Correct me if I'm wrong, somebody in the know.
Harry Smith, Town Planner. Yes, the 21st is the next meeting. And unfortunately, with the notice issue, we didn't actually get a copy of what was mailed out until yesterday. So we did not know. I would have certainly contacted you, Chris, to let you know. But so I think we just weren't aware that the notice said what it did. So.
Yeah. So yeah, back when this meeting was getting moved, you and I had some emails back and forth, and
Yeah.
you know, I asked if we should notice because of the change in situation, and there was no real formal follow up at that time, so we proceeded with what we had. But all that being said, the bulk of the documentation has been on the record at town hall, has been accessible through the site. There has been notice sent out. We had multiple notices for the wetland adventure and notices for the planning and zoning. So there certainly isn't any intent on the applicant's part to not notify the public. So, you know, we would love to get this thing started, get our testimony on the record, get the comments back from the commission and whoever from the public is engaged with this process, and then be willing to hold it open till the next meeting, so that we can you know, just be sure that we're dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's with respect to the notices.
Harry Smith, town planner, that makes sense to me. So maybe we could just get going.
Trustee Anders, Chair, yes, that's fine with me as well. So you can get started.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, folks. I appreciate it. So this is a project that we've worked our way through the wetlands approval process. That was from October, November, December, January, February, March. So that was a 6-month process. So the Wetlands Commission was doing their job. We've been thoroughly vetted through that adventure. And then now that is the plan set that we have in front of you. I'm going to start sharing my screen now to kind of give a little presentation, and we'll take it from there. Is that all right, Harry?
Yeah. Caitlin, if you made him a co-host so he could share, or what?
I have a share button here. Let me hit it.
Yeah, let's see what happens.
Yeah, you should be able to share.
Screen 2. I only do this 20 times a day. It shouldn't be that hard for me. So are we seeing a satellite map of the property? Just to make sure I'm sharing the correct screen.
Harry Smith, town planner. Yes, we are, Chris.
Excellent. So let's just get started with a little where we are in the world. Now, forgive me, like I said, we were 6 months in the wetlands adventure, so I don't want to make any assumptions that you guys are as well versed in this as the wetlands folks. So just let's do a little bit of where we are in the world, and then we'll talk about the project. This project is located on 2 parcels. There's one parcel that has frontage along Route 1, East Main Street here, and then the other one is 21 Sycamore Way. Right here, this road that ends in a cul-de-sac right here is Sycamore Way, and the area in question that we're developing is right off of the end of Sycamore Way. So this is just to kind of give a little context. I believe the Guilford town line and the North Brantford town line, they're right around here at Bill Miller's castle. This is Town or Swamp Road right here, obviously 95 and Route 1. So got the transfer station, and then we have the Army facility building here. So that's to give a little context as to where the heck we are in the world. What we are proposing to construct is a 20,000 square foot, 1-story medical office building. In reviewing the town regs today to get prepared for the meeting, I thought it was interesting that in our IG2 zone, that the regulation that we cited, medical laboratory in the IG2 zone and the IG zone require special exceptions, which has triggered this public hearing. But in the where is this? In the industrial uses, the research laboratory in that same zone is just a site plan approval. We went the conservative route and triggered the public hearing, going for the special exception. But I just, thought it was an interesting piece of the regulations that a research laboratory would be a special permit. A medical laboratory is, a site plan permit, whereas the medical laboratory is the special exception. So we went the more conservative route and have triggered this this public hearing now that we're engaged in.
Town Planner Harry Smith. Chris, you're also here because there's grading and excavation within 100 feet of an inland wetland. So that's a special exception in and of itself. So that's all folded together.
So that's another reason why we went through the extensive public hearing process with the wetland folks as well. So, but I just thought that was an interesting what's the word I'm looking for? Trivia of the regulations. We're proposing a 20,000 square foot building. The building itself is well within what is allowed in terms of the regulations. We don't need any relief from any of the required regulations in terms of the building size, the parking required, anything like that. So it really is it's a good use for this zone, this laboratory office building. It is an existing not Guilford, that's the town next door. It is an existing Branford business that is looking to expand. Brantford residents own it. It is folks who live in Brantford, work in Brantford, enjoy the town and want to stay in the town and are expanding their business in town. These are high-paying, white-collar laboratory jobs that are, I think a real asset to any community. We're proposing a 20,000 square foot building and associated parking spaces. And throughout the wetland approval process, we were working with the town engineer. We had a peer reviewer involved, and we worked with the obviously town wetland staff and met with the fire marshal as well. A couple of the items, as a result of meeting with the fire marshal, we needed to include this fire truck access along the northern side of the building and to provide additional path to walk for fire egress for people within the building. So this building has been vetted, and parking and access has been vetted through the fire department. We went through in the wetlands process through using the prudent and feasible alternatives process. This building originally was located a little further east, closer to the wetlands, so it has shifted over a little bit. To make the grading work, we need to use retaining walls. The proposed retaining walls meet the town standards. Your town requires that they can't be any taller than 8 feet. And when you have more than one, you need to set them back from each other, the required distance. So that's what's going on at the site. We need to get to the site. This site, the road currently ends. Sycamore Way is currently a cul-de-sac that ends. Currently a cul-de-sac that ends. When the subdivision for Sycamore Way was made, this right-of-way was established to provide access to the properties back here. So going through the wetland process, our access point was really determined by the right-of-way that was set up. There is a crossing here. It's a stream that comes down about like so. This stream then continues through a series of wetlands and then gets underneath I-95. It goes underneath 95 in a pair of twin 18-inch squashed pipes. So to get under the highway, it only needs plus or minus 3 feet in diameter of pipe to get through. In the wetlands process, we originally were proposing a smaller closed bottom box culvert. The process has evolved, and what we are now proposing is it's a 30-foot wide box culvert that has an open bottom to it. So we are maintaining the flow path and the ground cover of the native stream. And so in terms of wetlands impacts, this was the prudent and feasible alternative that we went with. As this plan set is currently provided, the initial concept was to have this cul-de-sac be turned over to the town. So it is currently depicted as a 36-foot wide town road meeting the town standards. We did that for a couple reasons. One, we wanted to make sure when we designed our retaining walls and got them permitted, we were depicting what was essentially the maximum footprint and wetland impact that we would have. And so this footprint that we got passed through the Wetlands Commission is essentially as wide of a crossing that you could have and stay within the allotted right-of-way and construct it with the retaining walls at the heights allowed by the town. Going through the planning and zoning process, it was brought to our attention that the proposed infrastructure that was necessary to cross this wetland area to the satisfaction of the Wetlands Commission, that has set up a situation where the infrastructure is not something that the town is willing to maintain. So we are now proposing that this road, the extension of Sycamore Way, will not be handed over to the town, but will remain a private development. So what is proposed now is a 36-foot wide town road, then has the potential to be reduced to a 24-foot wide industrial driveway. We would not propose to change the footprint or location of the retaining walls in any way, so that we would not need to alter the wetland impacts in any way. As far as the wetlands is concerned, the road is still the same. We would just propose to only have to pave 24 feet a width instead of the 36 feet, which, you know, simple math, that cuts it by a third. It's a pretty significant reduction in pavement, which is a goal of the people that need to pay to build these things, and I think a goal of all of us in general. If we can eliminate a 12-foot strip of pavement, why wouldn't we? So that is really what we're proposing here. To go a little bit into the plan set, the grading and drainage plan has again been vetted through the Wetlands Commission. We collect all of our runoff from the parking lots, the roof leaders from the building. We pipe that to a pond here via a hydrodynamic separator. So there is a water quality component to the storm system, along with the basin itself. And then we also have a stormwater collection system that picks up what is the existing storm system for Sycamore Way that currently ends in a head wall right there. And what we are proposing to do is pick it up, again, route it through a water quality structure hydrodynamic separator, and then release it just south of the proposed roadway, so that the stormwater is ending up exactly where it would originally. Currently, it follows this ditch right here and then turns down the stream. So we're just replicating drainage patterns and then providing some final scrubbing of it in the hydrodynamic separator. We have a landscape and lighting plan. Just going through the plan set, you know, we have proposed utilities. We're tying into the sewer system on this side of Sycamore Way, or bringing water in from Sycamore, electric, etc. So the utilities, you know, fairly standard, but we have sewer and water in the area, no septic required. We have a comprehensive erosion control plan. Our overall impacts are less than what is required to trigger a formal SWIP. But due to our proximity to the wetlands, the applicant volunteered to be restricted by the standards that would be applied to larger projects that need to get a formal SWIP. We have also provided a landscape plan that is in compliance with the town regulations. We have provided a site lighting plan, again, in compliance with the regulations. And as I'm sure most of you know, when you have filling of wetlands, you need to compensate that in some way. the way in which we are compensating for the wetlands filling is we are proposing a wetlands restoration area. There's a well-defined pocket of Phragmites just south of the crossing that we plan on eradicating and replanting with native wetland vegetation. So I thought it was an excellent and innovative way that the Wetlands Commission was handling that. And then the plan set gets into the details, the details for the hydrodynamic separator and things like that. So that is a overview of the process. We have also been in receipt of a number of comment letters. I mean, not an overview of the process, an overview of the project, excuse me. We've also been in receipt of a number of comment letters from a John Guskowski, a town planner reviewer. The engineer has provided some comments, as has town staff. I don't know, Harry, if you would like me to go through that, or if you'd like to take a moment now, and if the commission has some questions about what I've presented, this might be an appropriate time to do that. This is a little, because it's this type of public meeting, if we were all in the room together, people would have maybe raised hands or asked some questions at this point. So it feels like an appropriate time to at least throw that out there as an opportunity, but it's your meeting. So just let me know at this time how we want to proceed.
Chuck Anders, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Gagnon. At this point, maybe we can ask Harry, do you want to summarize anything from the staff report, or do you want to turn it back over to Mr. Gagnon to address engineers' comments, or how do you think you want to present this to us, Harry?
Why don't I quickly summarize them, and then if there's anything Mr. Gagnon wants to get into in detail, we can do that, or any of the commissioners as well. A lot of these are sort of technical issues that are either well on their way to being worked out, or that can be incorporated as potential conditions if they need to be. But I want to back up a little bit and talk about the properties included in the application. There are two, as far as I understand it, and there is and Chris, I don't know if you could go through and show actually the sheet you had up was great, but we can do this too. So there was a piece of the Bittersweet Farm that is now property of the U.S. Army. You saw that a second ago up on East Main Street. The remainder of the property, as far as I understand it, consists of two parcels, and the parcel line bisects the building, which just disappeared, but
yeah, so the Army's up here. Chris Gagnon, BL Companies, the Army site is up here. This was carved off of the property a few years in the past. That is correct.
So Chris, can you show them where the property line is between the two parcels involved? Yeah, so it does bisect the building.
But it's under common ownership.
Ownership, right. That could be addressed through a requirement to either merge the properties, or a requirement that would provide two options. One is to merge the properties. The other is to limit their separate sale without the express permission, written permission of the commission. But however, there is an area where the extension of Sycamore Way was proposed that is actually in what's commonly called a paper street that was part of the subdivision that goes way back to the 80s. So, at that point, I don't know whether there was any design proposed for the crossing of the wetland. If there was, this could be vastly different and have created problems that were not foreseen back then. But that part of it, for that to be a private driveway, that work should be included in the application. I understand that that's controlled by Mr. Secondino. Is that correct? Chris, do you know?
Yes, Chris Gagnon, BL Companies. I thought I was on mute. I was looking for my button there. Yes, that is controlled. That is it's part of the parcel. And I know this is not gospel here, but you can see you can see it's all connected through here.
Yeah. All right. Let me show one map if I could. Chris, if you could let go of the share screen for a second.
Yep.
Great. And I think I can do it. So I should be able to see, again, that's the building and the parking area. And this is the existing cul-de-sac currently paved at the end of Sycamore Way. My understanding is the accepted town road ends here at the cul-de-sac. So this part of it is what you could call paper street. My understanding is several easements exist that allow some of the post-site development that extends off of the confines of the paper street, if you will, onto these adjoining properties to the north and south of the Sycamore Way and private driveway layout. I did receive from the applicants copies of the easements and this sketch, which I think is fairly new, correct, in the last couple of days. And I've shipped that all off to town council just for a quick review. I'm assuming they cover everything that needs to be covered. We just want to double check that.
And town council was involved with the review of these easements during the wetlands process too. So I do believe it's 100% the right thing to send it their way for this review. But it certainly shouldn't be coming out of left field for them. It's information that at least has been discussed in the past. So they do have some, town council does have some history with these easements as we work through the wetlands process.
Okay. Again, Harry Smith, town planner, understood. Just again, a couple of the town engineers issues, as I think was alluded to. Most of them previously had to do with aspects of the proposed improvements and what was originally proposed to be a town right-of-way. Now that that's shifted over, he has narrowed his comments down substantially. And I'm not going to get every detail, have some comments about the sewer connection, which would have to be through an easement to the town. And there's some questions about a water stub. The stormwater system, I think, was in storm drainage calculations and so forth, were all approved by the town engineer, with the exception of a question of who will maintain them. I would imagine that would be the applicant for anything off of the right-of-way. Sometimes we make arrangements to for a right to drain because I think I don't know if that was ever formally granted for the stormwater runoff from Sycamore Way that currently goes this direction and is going to be picked up by the new drainage system to be created as part of the private driveway. That would need to be ironed out, and how to maintain the hydrodynamic separator and so forth. I mean, usually there are manufacturer's specifications, and often we require biennial reports or something that the thing's been cleaned out appropriately according to the manufacturer's specifications. So that kind of thing would need to be dealt with. And I think that is a couple of the smaller details in his comments. Just moving on to the consulting planner's comments, John Guskowski's and myself. The retaining walls on the property, as mentioned, they appear to be separated by 3 feet. We just need to make sure the measurements were taken in the way spelled out in the zoning regulations, which is from the top of footing to the top of the wall. And there's also a requirement to add some landscaping, I believe, at the top and the bottom of the wall, so that would need to be looked at. I think this is in progress because we talked about this, Mr. Gagnon and myself, about identifying significant trees on the property. The lighting appeared to be in conformance with the exception of the building mounted lighting, which needs to be identified and added to the photometric plan. I would, most of the limited disturbance, I think, follows a line of silt fencing. So I think those two things are coterminous pretty much. But there is a part of the limited disturbance that I don't think, because of the grade and the topography and how the water runs, requires silt fencing up, I think, in the northwest corner. So I'd propose having some construction fencing or something just to identify in the field for the contractor where the limits of disturbance are, and that's really clear. Again, I've already started working on conditions just to have them ready, and looking at things like an erosion and sedimentation control bond, and if there's going to be any blasting to create the area for the building, and all the usual conditions that the commission includes in their approval. But I think those cover the majority of the comments. Again, a lot of the other things are technical details, and I'll just stop right here, as I think we're collectively working our way through those, and if anything can't be addressed immediately, those kinds of things could be proposed as conditions.
Chuck Andrews, Chair. Thank you, Harry. Just one question for me before I turn over to the commission to see if there's any questions from commission members. And Harry, you mentioned this, the issue that it looks like the current lot line runs through the building. And I understand that the application consists of 2 lots, but unless there's a merger of the lot or a lot line revision, I think you got a setback problem, because that means the building doesn't complete the setback, because it's right, the line runs right through the building. So as a condition, I think you could do either of those, but I think you can't have a lot line that runs through a building and have it conform to setbacks, I don't think. The merger may be the quickest way to resolve that, but
yeah.
Or you could do a lot line revision so that you comply with setbacks. So that was my comment on that. Are there any questions or from commission members? One more time, any members, any commission, Chuck Andrews, Chair, any questions from commission members? If not, we can open it up to the public and ask if any member of the public would wish to comment. And I think, as Caitlin mentioned, the way to do that, I guess you can either send a message through chat or you can raise your hand. Do any members of the public wish to comment? Okay, seeing no members of public comment, we are going to continue the hearing. Is there anything else that the applicant would like to add at this time, applicant or staff or commission?
Not at this point, however, I just want to make sure that the folks who are muted can raise their hands. So I don't know, maybe Michelle, could you try and do that if you know how to do that? So I'm the host, I can't see the button.
Okay.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
I know, right? She said hover over here.
You go to your participant listing and you click more, but I can't see it from my viewpoint.
I don't see it. Is Caitlin there? She could tell me.
Yeah.
I'm new at this as well here.
Maybe I'll pick on someone from the audience here at random.
Yeah.
Maybe you, Mr. Ott, could you try and raise your hand?
Caitlin Piazza, Assistant Town Planner. Marjorie is currently raising her hand, so.
Oh, good. Okay, so it's workable. Thank you so much.
Good.
Just want to make sure it was functional. Okay. Thank you. Sorry for the interruption.
Okay, Chuck Andrews, Chair. Okay, then it appears then that there's no more comments at this time. So we'll continue this matter to our May 21st meeting. Is that when our next meeting is scheduled, Harry?
Town Planner Harry Smith. Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so we'll continue this matter to a Zoom meeting on May 21st, also by a video conference Zoom. So thank you, Mr. Gagnon.
Thanks to the commission for taking your time. Thank you for all your help, Mr. Smith, in working with us to get us this far with the process. And thank you to the chair and the commissioners for taking the time to hear us tonight. I appreciate all your help. Wishing everybody safe and healthy next couple weeks before we go.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gagnon. That brings us now going down our agenda. We have our minutes. There are 2 minute sets, one from April 2nd and the other from April 16th. And I understand that we deferred voting on the April 2nd meetings last time, and there were some things to clean up. And I understand, Harry, that we still need to clean that up. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes, Harry Smith, Town Planner.
Okay. So then let's turn then to the April 16th Zoom minutes. Those were sent out to us in our packet, and I think they're also available online. Again, commission members, if you had a chance to review those, and if so, if somebody would like to make a motion to approve the minutes from our April 16th, 2020 meeting. I guess we need to unmute commission members.
Joe Chadwick moves to accept.
Joe Chadwick makes the Chuck Anders chair. Joe Chadwick has made a motion to approve the minutes from April 16th. Is there a second?
John Lust, Commissioner. I'll do that. I'll second that motion.
Okay, Chuck Anders chair. So John is second to the motion. Any further discussion? Not all those in favor. We'll go down through the list. John Lust, how do you vote?
To approve.
Okay, John Lust votes aye. Joe Chadwick?
Joe Chadwick in the affirmative.
Joe Vayuso?
Joe Vayuso approves.
Marcy?
Marcy approves.
And Chuck Anders chair, I also approve the April 16 minutes. That brings us then to correspondence. Harry, what do we have for correspondence?
We have a letter submitted to us from Mr. Wayne Cook, and I can read it out. It's very short. Dear Brantford Planning and Zoning Commission, as has been your practice with other Brantford residents and property owners, we request an informal meeting with your commission to discuss the possibilities of developing certain properties on the town's east end. We ask that the meeting take place at your earliest opportunity and look forward to hearing from you. Sincerely, Wayne Cook. It is dated May 6th.
Okay, Chuck Anders chair, thank you. Okay, so this is a request to have a meeting from Mr. Cook. I think Mr. Cook is correct. We do have meetings with, applicants, informal meetings on occasions. When applications are not present, it's typically in connection with a specific proposal like a PDD to get some feedback from the commission. My concerns, and are a few concerns here, not saying no, because I don't think we should necessarily say no. One is that Mr. Cook has filed an appeal, so there is a lawsuit against the Planning and Zoning Commission that is pending right now. So insofar as the subject matter of the discussion relates to the lawsuit, our attorneys have, at least my understanding is our attorneys advise us we should not do that. So we should not have any discussion about matters relating to the lawsuit itself. That's in court and should be settled on the record, and don't want to have additional information come in that could be used in the lawsuit. So that's an unusual circumstance that distinguishes this from at least other requests. A second is again, the agenda is kind of vague. It just says development on the east side. I don't know if there is a specific development. We often, we do have informal meetings typically, and we're going to have one tonight. Well, we're going to hear one about a proposal in the Anchor Reef area that has some specific proposals. So it would be great if we could get at least some more specific information as to what specifically he would like to talk to us about, whether it's, you know, a specific proposal, whether it is in what properties are involved, is it a text amendment, zoning amendment, what sort of proposal are you thinking about? This is just, you know, and it would be nice to know in advance, so we'd have some idea. And then the third one is, it says we, and I don't know who we is. I mean, it's signed by Wayne, but I don't know. Is it just this property? Is it Mr. Cook's property? Is it other properties? Because I think that's, you know, this property was part of the Costco thing. There was an outstanding PDD. Is that still together? I mean, is that, you know, are there other property owners involved? So those are the sort of information that I think would be helpful to know, at least in advance of the meeting, and also the issue of about a, you know, the whole lawsuit issue. So those are my thoughts. Open it up to other members of the commission to what other members' other thoughts are.
I'll speak. John Luss, Commissioner. I kind of agree with you, Chuck. I think I'd like some more definition on what the subject is. What, you know, who are we talking just to Wayne, or are we talking to others, and what properties are involved? And you're right. We have to be careful not to address anything that might affect the court case.
Chuck Anders, Chair. Thank you, John. Any other members? Joe, Marcy, Joe Vayuso, any other thoughts?
Joe Chadwick, I've got nothing to add. You pretty much said everything that needed to be said.
Okay. Chuck Anders, Chair. Marcy, any thoughts? Or Joe?
Joe Vayuso, I think you covered most everything I was thinking about while what you said there. So I think we need more information.
Okay, great. Marcy, any thoughts?
No, nothing specific. Thank you, Marcy Paluzzi.
Okay. Okay, so Harry, perhaps what we could do then is just get back to Wayne and indicate, hey, can you give us that information again? I think, you know, just those three things, the you know, the issue of the lawsuit, so that affects subject matter, the agenda, and then who it is, what properties we're talking about, and gets more detail. And certainly you know, we may be able to do something. So Chuck Anders, Chair. Harry, any other correspondence?
No. Again, Harry Smith, Town Planner.
Okay, great. Okay, then that brings us then to old business. Item number 1 of old business is 165-195 Main Street, Kevin Curry. That's the Pepe's Special Exception Convenience Store gas station. And that matter, again, we had closed, and again tabled and scheduled to reopen the hearing on at our next meeting on May 21. So that's likely going to be reopen the public hearing on that one on our May 21 meeting. For that one, by the way, I indicated that I was thinking of recusing myself because I know the owner who serves on the Regional Planning Commission. And I believe Paul indicated that he would be able to get up to speed and listen to all the videos of the prior public hearings and deliberation sessions from the commission. So I may recuse myself from that, which means someone else would probably need to chair that at our next meeting. I'm not sure, you know, Marcy or John or somebody or Joe. So one of you, no, I think Joe's recused himself. So yeah, somebody. So to handle that one. And then item number 2 of our old business is Aldi's. That's the Sound Development Group, 1151 West Main Street, special exception. That's one that I believe you had authorized Harry and I to schedule a date for a public hearing. We haven't done that yet. Harry, do you have any recommendations as to when we should schedule the public hearing?
Again, Town Planner Harry Smith. I'm looking at the 21st, and we'll be having the town's consulting planner look at this also. That person has been having a brief contract break, if you will, so we're trying to get them back on board. They may be back on board tomorrow, so I think we can do that. We'll need to get the legal notice out tomorrow to have it on the 21st, so, but that's my goal.
Okay. Okay, then Chuck Anders chair. So then for item number 2, that's the Aldi's 1151 West Main Street. We may schedule that one. That may be at a public hearing at our next meeting, at our May 21st meeting. And I suppose if for some reason that fails, we don't get the notice in or something, it'll be at our June meeting. Harry, does that sound correct?
Again, Harry Smith, Town Planner, yes.
Okay. Great. Okay, and then item number 3, also 8 Howard Avenue, Chuck Anders chair, excuse me, special exception coastal site plan. We have a public hearing scheduled for the May 21st meeting on that one. So that concludes our old business, and then turning now to our new business on the agenda, item number 1, Statewide Development LLC, 41 Brantford Road. This is a 4-lot re-subdivision, and that's something that we will need to schedule for a public hearing. And I don't know, Harry, if you have a recommended date or if that's something that you would ask the commission defer to you in consultation with me to set the date.
Again, Harry Smith, Town Planner, definitely the latter. I think at this point, having flexibility would be helpful.
Okay, so let me just poll the commission. Is that okay with everyone that you authorize Harry, in consultation with the chair, myself, to schedule a public hearing for that item number 1 of the new business, which is the 41 Brantford Road 4-lot re-subdivision. Let me just poll you guys. John Lust, is that okay?
John Lust, Commissioner, affirmative.
Joe Chadwick, is that okay? Joe's on mute, I guess. He said okay. He waved okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Yes,
okay.
in the affirmative. I was muted by the host. Yes.
Okay.
Oh,
The affirmative.
Okay. Joe Viuzzo, is that okay?
Joe Viuzzo, yes, it's okay.
And Marcy, is that okay? Marcy's also muted. She has a thumbs up. Okay. So Marcy has verbally indicated that she also consents to that. Okay, so we'll schedule that for a public hearing. Item number 2 of new business is Matt and Lisa Pasco, 25 Fenway Road, special exception coastal site plan for a single-family home and installation of flood porch retaining wall. Again, that's this. Harry, is that a similar situation? We do need a public hearing for that, and is that something we either need to schedule a date for, or you would like to authorize the commission to defer to you and me to come up with a date?
Again, Harry Smith, Town Planner, yes, the delegation would be helpful.
Okay, great. And I will just run through the list. John, is that okay with you? John Lust?
John Lust, Commissioner, yes, affirmative.
Joe Chadwick, is that okay? Joe has had a thumbs up, and so he's verbally indicated yes. Joe Viuzzo?
Viuzzo, yes, it's okay.
And Marcy?
Marcy Paluzzi, yes.
Okay, and that's okay with me too. Okay, so we'll schedule that one for a public hearing. That brings us then to other business. And item number 1 of other business is the informal discussion for Anchor Reef PDD modification, the proposed Mariner's Landing. So is an applicant or the representatives here on that? And are you guys prepared to move forward? And I suppose we need to unmute some people. Is that correct?
Again, Harry Smith, Town Planner, my understanding is the applicant's engineer, Michael Ott, would be coordinating the presentation. So I think he will be unmuted soon. Let's see if I can do it, or Caitlin needs to, there you go. And I think I'll make you a let's see. Caitlin, can you make him a co-host?
I'm looking for Michael, right?
Yes.
Okay, Michael, you should be all set.
And I see, Marjorie, I've unmuted you.
Thank you.
There you go. Thank you.
And let me know if anyone else needs to be unmuted.
Yeah, I think I'm unmuted.
I'll unmute Sal.
Ken Borison.
Trying to find you, Ken.
It's K Borison. K Borison.
He's unmuted.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously.
Doug, is Doug unmuted?
I've got Doug. Hang on a second.
Doug
Okay.
Keating.
I'm here.
And then Bob Sachs, if he's still with us. I'm not sure what phone number he might be under. So if anyone else wants to be unmuted, just raise your hand for this particular item.
Harry, Robert shows up as Serena Sachs, I think.
Thank you. Sorry, I just missed them there. Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Attorney Marjorie Shansky for Mariners Landing. And I am here this evening. May I begin?
Yes, Ms. Jancy, you certainly may. Check in.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm here this evening with the representatives from Mariners Landing, Sal Maritoli and Robert Sachs. I'm here with Linda Ott from Summerhill Civil Engineering and Land Surveying. I'm here with Ken Borison from Ken Borison Architects and Doug Keisha, who is the landscape architect. We are here to talk about the way in which the application for this modification to a plan development district that goes back almost 20 years and is now hopefully going to come to full fruition, 147 unit residential units, mixed use development. We're here to primarily discuss with you movements in the architecture that the commission has seen previously, and to also talk about the pedestrian amenities and public access to make it a more robust and inviting situation for the town center village district. So with that, and then of course we'd love to take your questions and comments so that we can proceed to a full application with coastal site plan very quickly. So with that, Mike Ott is going to talk about the site plan.
Thank you, Marjorie. Just for the record, I'm Mike Ott. I'm a professional engineer and land surveyor with Summerhill Civil Engineers in Madison. I'm going to share my screen if I can. Just 1 second. Can everyone see that okay? Are you able to see that drawing?
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give you just a brief overview of the site and its environs, and then the proposed site improvements and layout of the site. I apologize if some of you of the commission members may have been on the commission for previous applications for this anchor reef development. So I apologize if I'm telling you something you already know, but I'll try to be quick. So I'm sure you all know where the site is located. The Brantford River at the bottom of the page, the train station, and Maple Street, and Indian Neck Avenue, and crossing the river again. I'll kind of trace with my cursor, which I hope you can see, the current limits of the anchor reef development start here at the corner of an existing pool and clubhouse building and tennis court. And I'll just quickly try to trace the boundaries. It runs along the street line of Maple Street, along the street line of Indian Neck Avenue, pretty much straight down to the river, along the river to the west, and then back up to the clubhouse area and pool and tennis court. So that's the current. This is a zoomed out view of the current site and its environs. And please stop me at any point if you have any questions. This next drawing is a zoomed in view of the site itself, the Anchor Reef development, which I'll again just trace really quickly. Here's the clubhouse and the pool and the tennis court that I was talking about. The boundaries of the site go up along the street line of Maple Avenue, Indian Neck Avenue, straight down to the river, along the river, and back up again. That parcel, that entire current parcel, is about 11.25 acres. The portion of it that Mariner's Landing proposes to develop is approximately 7 acres. And its boundaries will start where my cursor here is at the intersection of this sidewalk, and pretty much parallel to the sidewalk, straight up to Maple Street, along Maple Street, along Indian Neck Avenue, back down alongside on the east side of the main driveway to the site that exists today, back over to the common boundary between the Anchor Reef development and Land of Marine Systems, Inc., and then down to the river and along the river and back again. So that the proposed development area is approximately 7 acres. The proposal would be to withdraw this 7-acre parcel of land from the current condominium association. That would leave a parcel of land on the west side with the Anchor Reef development, and a parcel of land here on the east side with the Anchor Reef development. This building on the west side is I think it's a 3-floor, if I remember right, residential building with 30 units in it. This is a lower, possibly a 2-floor, I can't quite remember, brick building that was renovated. I assume it was one of the original brick buildings, and it has 14 units in it. Again, please stop me if anybody has any questions. So the proposal would be to, and hopefully you can see this well enough, to construct 4 new residential buildings. Building A, Building B, Building C, and Building D. And as Attorney Kensky said, there would be a total of 147 units combined in all 4 buildings. This drawing depicts in color the site improvements that we would make. In addition to the buildings, there would be a sidewalk network. You can see in this kind of light tan color, you can see a sidewalk network throughout the site. The sidewalk that runs along along the river at the top of the bank would be a continuation of this existing walk that is there today. So it would pick up this existing walk on the west side of the property and go all along the river to the eastern property boundary. In addition to the buildings and the sidewalk network, we would add additional parking that's shown in the darker gray color, a parking area here, a parking area along the front of Building B, a parking area on the east side of Building B, a little additional parking here. And then on the east side of Building D, we would add parking in this kind of horseshoe shape that you can see. There are the proposal is to provide public access to the waterfront and to the existing dock here. There's a fixed pier and floating dock section that you're probably aware of. There'll be, as you can see here, a swimming pool, patio, and cabana area associated with the development. Ken Borison, the architect, and Doug, the landscape architect, will explain more of the features of the public amenities, public seating, and public viewing areas. The site is within the coastal boundary. Obviously, it's almost entirely within a special flood hazard area zone. So the non-parking level of the buildings have to be elevated, of course, at or above the base flood, actually 1 foot above the base flood elevation. I forgot to mention that the plan is to have parking on the lower levels of all 4 buildings. I think that's a general overview of the site, and unless you have any questions, I'd like to turn to the architect, Ken Borison.
Thanks, Mike. I think Doug's gonna go over the landscape plan first.
Okay, I will bring that up.
Doug, are you there?
I'm here. Is my cursor working? Can you see my cursor?
No.
No? Share screen, how do I?
I guess.
I'll describe it.
Yeah.
I'll just describe it. Thank you. Doug Keacha, it's Douglas S. Keacha, Landscape Architect, LLC, just for the record, registered landscape architect. The landscape plan started with a review of the site plan and the architectural plans. The placement of buildings A, B, and C create a courtyard that's open to the river. This area also includes the pool and gazebo. The proposed plantings in this area were meant to scale and soften the buildings and provide some privacy for bathers, also provide a variety of more intimate outdoor spaces for residents, all while not unduly blocking river views. Circular patios located in the lawn area between the pool and the Riverwalk are shaded by trees for hot summer days. These trees will also frame views of the river from the apartments. Buildings C and D form a linear green space. Narrow, mid-sized trees are proposed along the common walk between these buildings to green and shade the space and form a screen to short-circuit views from apartment to apartment. A buffer planting is proposed along the Nellie Green property line. Tree placement is as close to the property line as possible so as not to block views across the open lawn area from the adjacent building behind our project. This lawn area is also left unplanted with the exception of a few perimeter shrub massings and parking area screen plantings. The Riverwalk separates a lawn on one side from the natural buffer along the river frontage. Plantings are kept a distance away from the paved walk to allow access for fire and emergency vehicles. Benches are also provided at intervals for public use. A cafe with outdoor patio is also provided for public use at the river end of Building D, with plantings of inkberry, juniper, serviceberry, and rose of Sharon. That patio would also provide river views. Plant selection began with a site visit and survey of existing vegetation. Several factors came into play. Common horticultural plants were selected for use around buildings and the pool area for flower and aesthetic reasons. Indigenous plants were favored for all other areas, especially along the river. Native red maple was selected as a shade tree to reflect existing trees on adjacent properties. Gray birch was found growing along the Nellie Green property line and so was used as the tree species between buildings C and D. Red cedar, also colonizing the site, was used for the Nellie Green buffer. Indigenous inkberry was used throughout the site. The area between the river and Riverwalk is augmented with plantings of native bayberry, red cedar, serviceberry, blueberry, beach plum, and indigenous grasses, which will provide erosion control as well as food and shelter for wildlife. Lastly, a group of plants were incorporated, which I call cultural landscapes. Hydrangeas, beach roses, rose of Sharon fall into this category. They've been strongly associated with the New England coastline for at least the past century, and for that reason, as well as for their beauty and scent, were included in this site. At this point, I would like to turn to Ken Borison for discussion of architectural details.
Great. Thanks, Doug. I'm Ken Borison. You can stay on this slide for a second, Mike. I'm Ken Borison, principal at Kenneth Borison Architects. I'd like to thank the commissioners in the town of Brantford for continuing to have these meetings. As a small business owner, to keep things moving and your efforts. I'm delighted to be able to share with you some of the architectural design features and the added public features we have included based on the comments that were made at the former meeting. The look of the buildings has been in question. Some in the community really like the flat roof art style that was presented at the last meeting, while others, that actually was based on a development in Provincetown, Cape Cod, and others in the committee thought the development could have a marine waterfall. So what we're going to do is show you both concepts, and we're interested in getting your comments and really your preference. Sal, can you move to the next slide? Can you guys hear me?
Again, Harry Smith, town planner. Ken, we're having a little trouble with the audio. It's a little like it's tailing off a little bit.
I'll turn it up a little bit. How's that?
That's a little clearer. Thank you.
Okay.
A little louder.
Yeah, I turned the volume up, and I'll speak right into the phone. So
great. Thank you.
So this is the original perspective that we had indicated last time. It's based on large overhang. This is a view from the Riverwalk as you're going by, and you're looking at building C in the background and building B. What happened to it? Oh. And building B on the left side. This style was based on, as I mentioned, a Provincetown, Cape Cod style of large overhanging soffits, flat roofs, arts and crafts style with brackets, board and batten on the upper level, horizontal siding in the second and third level, and stone on the lower level. It kind of nods to the other building that's west that has a flat roof but provides more modern arts and crafts character. The porches in this were thinner and were initially designed to defer to the larger building. But after we developed the alternative option, which we're going to show you, we feel that some of the items you will see could also be applied to this arts and crafts option. Those items include creating more substantial porches and adding awnings to the lower level. The pros to this option, it's capped at 50 feet to the parapet. It allows kind of a 360-degree view if you're on a roof deck. It's a little more efficient to build, and it's got more of a contemporary feel. Mike, can you go to the next?
Yep.
So this is the gambrel roof option. So we've created a nautical gambrel roof style that provides kind of Nantucket gables, varies in height, has low slope dormers. These elements would surround a flat roof in the center of the building, but your view is indicated in the perspective. We've added a layer of tighter horizontal siding divided from the lower wider horizontal siding with a band board where the gambrel begins, and added upper diamond pattern gables that project from the lower gables and are carried by 14-inch brackets. We substantially beefed up the porch structure, providing tapered columns, deeper beams, and more articulate trim at each level, utilizing classic proportions to create stronger structures on their own. We've also added lower level awnings, burgundy and white, to accentuate the lower level, add a pop of color, and nicely contrast with the gray siding. Again, both the porch design and the awnings could be added to the flat roof option. The column type would be a little different if it was on the arts and crafts. It'd probably be tapered and square. We also added a flagpole in the courtyard. And pros to this style is it's more varied in its roof line, lower at the edge of the building, and it's more traditional. Mike, can you go to the next one, Mike?
Yep.
So here's like an elevation that you can really see the details. You can see the varied roof line. The main roof is behind sort of the shed roof, which is the darker gray between the gambrels. Behind that, it's at 46.6. The top of that shed is at 49. The architectural features in this option, a portion of that uppermost triangular gable are a bit higher than the flat roof scheme, but they're about the same height as the building to the west when you consider the peaked elements of that roof. And those architectural features in the uppermost portion of the gables would be less than 25% of the roof area. So again, you can see the beefier, the wider columns. The columns are 14 inches tapered to 12 on the porch. Larger beams, 1 foot beams with trim on each level. So they kind of speak and complement the more detailed style of the gambrel Dutch colonial. Next slide. Okay, so finally, the committee in our last discussion was clear about the need to have a public program element near the water. The coffee shop that was described by Mike is located at the lower level of Building D and opens to a semicircular deck shown with umbrellas here that's adjacent to the public walkway. This perspective view is from the public walk as you round Building C and you look toward the coffee shop, the public dock that's there, the new semicircular patio that's opposite the dock, and the public passive play area behind where families can fly kites or play ball. We believe this creates a better public accommodation to the project and was expressed in the last informal meeting. We believe the development's better for it. Please note that we don't have an exact topographical survey yet, so the levels might be slightly different. We think the building to the left is slightly higher up, but we'll deal with that when we have exactly the topographical survey. So we're very interested in knowing what the committee feels about these options and if there's a general consensus. It was interesting, Sal was telling me that he kind of took a poll and about 50% like the flatter roof and 50% like the gambrel roof. So very interested in hearing what you say. And I send it back to Marjorie so she can field the questions. Are there questions that or thoughts that people have about the style?
Chuck Andrews, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. Okay, so questions about the style. Just question here, is this is in the center review area, is it? So would this be reviewed by the center review board?
Town Planner Harry Smith, yes, and the applicants have been in front of them. I think the couple of times they've come in front of you, possibly even in a couple of additional meetings. So I don't believe they saw the gambrel option. Is that correct? I think at the last time there was a review at Town Center that was not developed yet. Does that sound right?
Yes, that's correct. That's Ken Borison. Yes, that's correct. They saw the original arts and crafts flat roof.
Okay.
I guess the Chuck Andrews, Chair, if you're looking for feedback from us, I think the main thing I think is what do we, we like, I think one of the things we mentioned last time is having the public element. That was critical. Just the reality is we have a dock, there's a Stony Creek area. Even though it's not technically a water dependent use, having something where the public can go to get some exposed to the river, and it's a great, so some component of that has, I think, always been part of this, project. So I'm very pleased that you've added that component. And it kind of makes some sense too, that you could have the the 3 units in on themselves and the privacy in there, and this is a more public area with the open space right next to it. So that's points for that. I guess so there's that question. Adding that's a plus from my point of view. Other questions I think would be: are we okay with the density of this? And I guess I would add a question maybe about affordable or fee in lieu of or something like that as well. So those are my preliminary thoughts. Let's turn it. You're looking for comments from commission members, so let's get some comments if we can. We'll just go down the list. John, do you have any thoughts?
Yes, as a residential development, I understand it. John Lusk, Commissioner speaking. However, being part of the downtown district, I'd like to see more of a mixed-use development. I mean, this is entirely residential. I mean, if you look at the plan of conservation and development, this particular area is supposed to draw the public to it, and this is privatizing the waterfront. That's just my thought.
Okay, thanks, John. So, Joe, well, I'm just going down the order. Joe Chadwick. Joe, thoughts?
Okay, Joe Chadwick speaking. Yes, I echo John's sentiments on privatizing the waterfront. My second point is all of the views we've seen are with respect to the waterfront and not street where most of us will be passing by. So how does this compose with respect to the view from Maple Street and Indian Neck Avenue? In other words, it was referred to in a previous presentation as the money shot, but for those of us who aren't spending the money and just have to live with it, what does it look like? My third observation is I'm really glad that we lost the path that was axial to the pole down to the waterfront. That disturbed me in ways I'm having difficulty articulating. I'm also happier with the gambrel style roof than the arts and crafts roof. That style tends to have been co-opted by too many commercial developments lately. You drive around like in North Haven and Universal Drive, and this wouldn't be that much different from it if it maintained that flat roof aspect. There is precedent for large gambrel-shaped buildings in the Connecticut and Brantford waterfront. When Lenny's opens up, you can see a lot of those old hotel buildings in on the walls. So I think there's a better precedent for a gambrel form than a flat roof pseudo arts and crafts building. And I guess that's it for me for now.
Before
Could
you
I-
go with the commission, Marjorie Shansky here, and thank you for unmuting me. I just want to perhaps go back to the site plan, Mr. Ott, for a second, because there is additional commercial space that I think was not commented on originally, and that is in the front building. Mike, if you could put the site plan back up.
Bear with me if you can hear me. I'm trying.
So there's additional.
I would go, Mike, I would go to the landscape plan. Yeah.
Go ahead, Ken.
I can, would you like me to comment on that, Marjorie?
Yes.
So, Joe, thank you for your comments. I'm glad that you commented on the style, and I think the gambrel is more vernacular in that way. But the coffee shop is not the only commercial element there. There's a coffee shop at the end of building D, which is about 2,200 square feet. And there's another business that Sal is talking to that would go next to that. So that's another 3,100 square feet. So there's approximately 5,300 square feet of commercial space at the bottom of building D. And the parking area that's to the east of that and the passive play area are all meant to be public amenity space, including, the circular area opposite the dock to kind of define the dock area with benches, so that whole area, essentially from the bottom of building D, sort of from the center of it down, and to the east of that is all public oriented.
There's also commercial space in building
And B, yes.
B.
Yeah, in B, at the entrance, there'll be a lobby in building B with some offices and a gym, a small gym of about 850 square feet that opens to where the pool is. So we've tucked in as much kind of commercial space as we can while still keeping the parking that's needed underneath the other buildings, portions of those buildings.
But can I interrupt? So would that commercial space be at the same elevation as the parking underneath? I mean, essentially a grade?
It's slightly higher. It's slightly higher because of the floodplain.
Okay.
So it's at 13 and the parking is slightly lower.
What elevation is the parking at?
I think about 12.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about the relationship of coming into the front parking lot in front of building B and having uses that feel like you're not walking up a number of steps. You're not dealing with step access or anything like that.
No, when you come in off the parking lot, it'll just be graded up so you can get right in.
Yeah, okay, good.
Yeah, and the same thing with, the coffee shop and things. There'll be a way to grade up so that you can come in off of that area and get in.
So
it's not going to be going. Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Harry, town planner.
And one other thing, Harry, that Riverwalk is going all the way to the property line. It goes right to the property line.
On the east side, Harry,
on the east.
planner. Okay, to Brantford landing side. Okay.
Right, and so the hope is that will eventually then continue through the marina and to Nellie Greens.
All right. Again, Harry Smith, town planner. The question I had was the gym. That's going to be for residents only, right? I'm assuming. Small gym.
That's correct. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that you, Sal? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Sal Maritoli, Mariners Landing. The gym will be residents only. However, there will be some office space there as well. One of the offices would be an office to service the buildings, and there'll be room for another office, maybe a real estate office or any kind of an office space. Going back to building D again, in addition to the coffee shop, the thought was it would be something like a common grounds kind of a coffee shop there, pretty sizable, with the ability to come out and enjoy coffee out on the deck. And then I am talking to another well-known Brantford business that is a very passive business, but open to the public, and I think a perfect spot there. It's one of the day spas, and keep in mind that we're trying to strike a balance point between making the area as accessible to the public as possible. That's why we added that very large sitting area off the dock. That whole area above that is what we're considering a passive recreation area. There's another area down along the walkway to the west, which we're going to designate for public seating as well. We're not opposed to having a small food cart or something there to draw the public down. But we're trying to balance that with, there are also 44 residents that currently live there. They've been very, very supportive of the project. And we're trying to walk that fine line between welcoming the public and respecting the privacy that they've had. And as Ken mentioned, it's difficult to add much more retail or commercial space because our buildings are elevated. Typically, that space is found on the ground floor. But we think we've done, a lot, and appreciated your comments last time. And we think we've done our best to accommodate that and not make it a residents-only project.
There's also parking. There are a couple of parking spaces for the public access at the front of the site, and there will be bicycle parking as well. And of course, it's part of a neighborhood in which people will be on their feet. So, and there will be signage to attract people to the public access.
Again, Harry Smith, town planner for the record. That was Attorney Chansky for the record.
Oh, I beg your pardon.
That's okay, thank you. Again, Harry Smith, town planner, just a couple of quick things, if I might. One is that I just wanted to make sure the commission was aware. I think this was brought up at prior meetings, but the current PDD, I believe, only has 70 units of allowed additional development. So this would represent basically a doubling of the possible density in PDD. That's not, I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm just saying that that's something you may want to consider. I know, again, Chuck, I think you touched on affordable housing. I think that was brought up in earlier discussion. Since this is a planned development district, basically the commission can write the zoning regulations for it in conjunction with the applicant. And I've seen we've done a little looking into what other towns are requiring. It seems to be somewhere in the 10 to 15% range, with the idea you certainly don't want to lose ground on your appeals list percentage. And whether that takes the form of actual affordable units in this complex or some other way to accomplish that, I don't know yet, but that's something out on the table, I guess, at this point.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Certainly.
This is Marjorie Shansky again. With respect to density, I would like to say that in section 52 of your regulations, you value density because of the town center village district. And it is the case that with the proximity adjacency really of the train station, that the density of 17 to 22 units per acre is that density that supports public transit. So it is an appropriately and sustainably calibrated density that meets the needs of exactly the location in which it's found. And that is sought under the modification to the planned development district and the 20 years that have gone by and everything that we've learned about sustainable development in the interim. With respect to affordability, I think certainly based on the town planner's comments, there probably is a conversation to be held, but I have to say that it has certainly not been off the radar, but the site constraints and the environmental cleanup and the complexity of the uncoupling of the land have all exponentially increased the cost of developing. And in order to make an affordable development, the required density would simply be inappropriate for the site. So in balance, it's not that it wasn't evaluated, it's just really not feasible. But I'd be interested in speaking with the town planner along the conversation that he was just mentioning.
Chuck Anders, Chair. Thank you, Ms. Jansky. I mean, my quick reaction is if you look at, again, what are our multifamily zone with 6 per acre, you know, and granted that's there, and that's essentially what this is. This is whatever, close to 18, 19, 20. On the other hand, we have an incentive housing thing in our regulations, which is this is closer to that density. This is around that density. I think that's, you can get up to 20 and for incentive housing, but again, part of the trade-off of that is you get the affordable component. So, and I don't know what, maybe it doesn't have to be, I don't know how much, but that's something you'd be looking at, or a fee in lieu of, or something like that. But you're right, the density works and it's happening, but there's also a lot more activity on the affordable front recently. And, you know, I mean, as Harry mentioned, you get behind it. You know, we're vulnerable to 830G, and adding 130 units makes us more vulnerable because our percentage goes down. So, you know, so there's that element.
Can I put in a few cents?
Absolutely.
So I'm glad Marjorie.
Marcy Pelosi for the record. Right?
I'm sorry, Marcy Pelosi for the record. I'm glad Marjorie brought up the density, because I was about to ask about the TOD. Nobody's specifically referred to the transportation oriented design district. And, you know, I'm trying to recall in that regulation whether that was, I remember that it promoted the density, but I'm trying to recall how much it promoted residential density over mixed use. But, you know, what I recollect is that, you know, we want that train station to have a strong hub and to attract walkable people, so that we're not, you know, so they can park at their house and walk to the train station. And I think that this promotes that very much. And the other aspect about, you know, just thinking about having more retail space aside from the elevational issues, you know, this, like the brewery, is a very much of a park and arrive type situation. And I think what they're doing with creating that walkway, if by chance they could connect a walkway over to the brewery and connect a proper walkway across where we had the hotel site down through Montelouise and into, you know, what's Chet's Pond area, you'd get a lot of public use along the river. And I think that's the true intent. And I think that this supports that. What I'm picked up that I know that they haven't worked out the details for is they had mentioned the elevational changes. And I think, you know, that was an opportunity, you know, if depending on what elevation you set the walkway at relative to the mean high water in that public domain, you could work with the elevation or the grade with the land to, you know, really define the public spaces separate from the outdoor spaces of the unit owners. And I think that because the parking is under the buildings, there's a whole lot less coverage than we typically see for this density. So I really like that about this plan, that you've got that flexibility to work with the elevations, create some separation in what's that sort of courtyard between buildings A, B, and C, and still have an open public space outside of building D. So, you know, I see a lot of really favorable things for a site that's kind of laid dormant for a long time. And I think that this, you know, could go a long way to really furthering what was intended with the TOD work. You know, and I think the crux of that is to encourage connections, you know, to the town center and to the train station. So, you know, I would probably like to look a little more closely at the connections, the pedestrian connections along the front of the project. But I think it's, you know, it's off to a good start. And, you know, I missed the presentation previously with the first architecture. And when I look at them both for the first time, you know, I hate to disagree with Joe Chadwick, but I actually prefer the flat roof. So that's just my 2 cents.
Chuck Anders, Chair. Thank you, Marcy. Joe Vayuso, do you have any comments?
First thing came to mind was the density. You know, originally we had 330 unit high-rise, and one of them was built, the other 2 were not, so that's 30 out of 90. And so that leaves us with 60. Now the 60 goes to 147. But hearing some arguments to validate extra density, actually has some merit, with the train station and the brewery and whatever. So with walking, so I'm starting to wonder, well, maybe a little extra density wouldn't hurt, but I'm not sure. 147. I can't remember, but I think when we first had an informal discussion, I thought it was only 3 buildings. And now I'm not sure 7 is, I think is a bit much, but no, I can't be forget. But it is a lot more than what was originally planned, from 90 now to 147.
Yeah.
Not 147. It's there's 30 there already, so to 147. Other than that, I think it's a nice plan. Have some I'm with
there
you.
was
Like the I'm not on the.
Barry.
That's all for now.
Thank you, Joe. Chuck Anders Chair. Mr. Borison?
Yeah, there was, when we first came last time, it was slightly less, 139. But then we moved the gym to the lower level, picked up a couple and added a few on the backside. So it's at 147 now. It's a nice mix. I agree that with a transit-oriented development, more density brings more life. It's great. I think it's a good thing, but for what it's worth, wasn't there a development way back that was way more dense?
Harry Smith, Town Planner. I'm not aware of that. It's possible. The history of this goes back almost 20 years, I think. I know, just in response to Joe's comments, I think the building D, the idea at one point, correct me if I'm wrong, is it was to be a hotel, and that was at some point, I think the last go around, that was one option, and then this multifamily was another option. It sounds like possibly you're settling on the multifamily at this point rather than the hotel.
This is a market-driven decision. The representatives from Hilton and Marriott visited the site and thought it was an appealing site, but were concerned that on the off-season in the winter that the occupancy would not be feasible, that it simply didn't have the right location to be feasible from their perspective, and it would be important to have a really high branded entity there if it were going to work at all. So that drove the decision.
Understood. Harry Smith, Town Planner.
And that was Marjorie Shansky before, not me. With apologies to the stenographer.
Chuck Anders Chair. Is there any other commission members that have any comments, any additional comments? I know we've gone through once or so. I don't know if John or Joe have any further comments you'd like to make.
John Lust, no further comment at this time, Chuck.
Thanks. Joe Chadwick? Nothing else. Okay. Anything else that do you guys have any other questions of us, or I mean, we're just sort of giving our reactions. Right. So you've heard 5 different reactions. So what do you? I hope we've given you some sense here.
No, I think that's been very helpful, Mr. Chairman, and it will give us an opportunity to talk about what we've heard here tonight, and we're pleased that we seem to be making progress on the the desirability and layout of the public access, and we'll continue to work on it.
Great. Well, thank you. We
Thank you.
appreciate your coming, seeking our advice. So, and hope it's been helpful.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
So then that brings us now, going through our agenda. Again, we're at item number 2 of other business, which is a time extension request for 8 Fellsmore Farm Road. Gary, can you tell us what this is?
Yes. This was a section, again, Town Planner Harry Smith, this was a section 6.8 approval for regrading. They got 1 year. They would like another year. There's a single family house on Fellsmere Farm Road. So it's pretty much that straightforward.
Okay, so, and there's been, Chuck Andersteer, as far as you know, there's no change in circumstances or any reason that we should not grant the extension, as far as anyone knows?
Yeah, Harry Smith, Town Planner, I know no reason to not grant the extension.
Okay. So, again, Chuck Andrews, Chair. Then does someone want to make a motion to approve a 1-year time extension for the 8 Fellsmere Farm Road?
John Lust, Commissioner, I'll make that motion.
Motion made by John. Is there a second? Chuck Andrews, Chair.
Joe Chadwick seconds.
Okay. Second, Chuck Andrews, Chair. Second by Joe Chadwick. We'll go through the list. John, how do you vote?
Affirmative. John Lust, affirmative.
Joe Chadwick.
Joe Chadwick in the affirmative.
Joe Vayuso.
Joe Vayuso, approve.
Marcy Palusi. Unmute Marcy. What happened?
Don't know, but I'm unmuting her again. I don't know.
Go like this if you
Time
mean
I
yes.
mute, the host freezes my mute, so I can't toggle it myself, which is very frustrating.
Oh,
Okay.
sorry about
So
that.
I'm happy to constantly ask the host to unmute me, but yes, affirmative, Marcy Paluzzi.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I also vote yes, so that motion passes 5-0. That brings us then to item number 2, a time extension request for the special exception for 6-12 Business Park Drive, and Mr. Harrington, before he retires and goes off in the sunset, is going to try to convince us to grant his client in a 5-year extension for this. So can we unmute Mr. Harrington?
I am not sure which phone he might be on here, so if you could raise your hand if you know how to do that.
I should be.
Oh, you're there. Great.
Right.
There you are. Great.
So I guess I don't like to start when I hear the chairman say, "I'm going to try and convince you." Anyway, I had submitted, originally thought that this would just be presented in a writing, which I prepared on April 29th and forwarded to Harry. Now, I don't know if anybody's had an opportunity to read that or not. I'm going to assume you did not. So bear with me if what I say is, bears a striking resemblance to what you've already read, but I'm going to do it nonetheless. My client, Alex Clutch, is the member of Stony Creek Medical Center, LLC, who had this special exception granted on December 4th, 2014. And would like to extend it another 5 years, but he let the 5-year period go by before he decided that something had to be done formally to request the extension. So basically, he simply failed to move in a timely fashion to ask for the extension. Gave it to me on December 17th, 2019, some 13 days after the 5-year period had ended. And then I got a request on December 19th, requesting that it be extended through December 4th, 2024. I was told by Harry that at your meeting, you wanted me to tell you or to provide you with a reasoning by which you could grant the exception or the extension, even though it was filed after the expiration of the original approval. course, started looking through the regulations to see if I could find something. I did not. And if there was something there, I'm sure you would already know about it before I would. I then looked at the case law and to see if there was anything in there or in the general statutes to see if there was anything that addressed this particular issue. And I did not find anything that said that you could, but by the same token, I didn't find anything that said that you couldn't grant an extension even though it was requested after the expiration of the original approval period. So isn't any case law or statutory law that I'm aware of, and Chuck, perhaps you know something that I don't, but I did not find anything that said you could or that you could or could not grant the extension. So I conclude from that there's no statutory or legal prohibition from your doing so. The second thing I thought about was that the approval was granted on December 4th, 2014 and ran for a period of 5 years. However, as I'm sure you know, you always have to worry about the fact that there might be an appeal taken, and the appeal period is 15 days from the date of the publication of the notice of the approval. So if you, rather than count the 5-year period for requesting an extension within 5 years from the date of the approval, but rather use 5 years from the date of the expiration of the appeal period, or in the event there was an appeal, from the dismissal of that appeal by final judgment, then we would be well within the time that was required. 15 days from December 4th is exactly December 19th, the day that I submitted the request. And I don't know the specific date that you published it, but I know that you don't get it in. The publication does not occur the day after. It depends upon when the newspaper schedules these things, and it's usually anywhere from a week to 2 weeks after the actual approval is granted. So the argument that I put to you is that the 5-year period for the purpose of requesting an extension should run from the date of the expiration of the appeal period, because that's really the time frame within which your approval is good, if you will, and can be used. I also, but by the same token, I'm not suggesting that if you wait 4 years from the date of the expiration of the approval and then make a request to extend it, that you get 5 years from that date. You basically get the 5 years would run from the period of time that the first approval ended, and no further than that. I also contacted a couple of land use attorneys that I know, and I'm not going to use anybody's names, but there are people that have appeared before your board, and asked them if they were aware of any case law or statutory law on this particular issue, and they told me they were not. And coincidentally, one of them said to me, "Well, did you think about using the argument about the appeal period," which was the one that I just relayed to you. And I said, yes, as a matter of fact, I had thought about that, and I was happy to hear that, that was something that he was thinking about too. And he advised me, and he's used it in other towns where he's had this same issue come up successfully. So I know that it is, at least it has been accepted through some commissions that you do get the advantage of the appeal period as a stay, if you will, for the purposes of filing an extension. I also would just note parenthetically that the Sterling Ridge project, which I'm sure you all remember, was one where I represented the Brantford Historical Society, and in that the applicants had come and asked for a modification of their approvals well after the approvals had expired, and the commission allowed a modification. Now, granted, nobody from the opposition raised that particular issue, but it was discussed that the approval period had already expired. So I only use that as a case in point of it's not like this is the first time that it's ever been done. So I believe in summation that there's no prohibition for you granting the extension that's requested. that using the appeal period argument, I think, is valid. Unfortunately, we missed the time, but we didn't miss the time by very much. It's a very small a very small period of time that elapsed from the time we could have had this thing granted without any difficulty like this, but failed to do so. I don't know if there's anybody in objection to this from the public. I'm unaware of any. No one's contacted me. I don't know who's in the meeting. I don't know if anyone is appearing from the public to object to this, but I am not aware of any. And that is all that I have at this moment.
Thank you, Mr. Harrington. Chuck Anders, Chair. Have there been any other change in circumstances that you knew, if you had done this in a timely fashion, or is there any reason you think we should not, any reason why we would not grant the extension?
Well, I will, first of all, let me just qualify your remark by saying I didn't fail to file it in time.
Right.
I filed it as soon as I got it.
Yes, the malpractice by Mr. Harrington. But we won't get into that.
Thank you. In any event, yeah, I don't want to go out in flames.
Right.
In any event, no, I'm not aware of any. The only problem is that this wasn't done in a timely fashion. Had I been aware of it, I mean, if my client had contacted me on December 3rd, you would have had the request on December 3rd. I got it in as quickly as I could given the circumstances, but I do not know of any changed circumstances that would preclude you or should give you pause for concern. My client has no intention of going beyond what the original approval was.
Thank you. Commission members have any comments?
No. What I can see, I don't think it's a bad thing to give them another 5 years.
Okay. So that was Joe Vayuso for the record. Chuck Anders, I don't have any problem. I think, that's a legitimate argument about it running from the appeal period, because I think what he says is correct. Because that's a sort of way to limit this as well, if we're concerned about precedent. And I think I'm aware that some other towns have allowed retroactive, have done it even if it's been late. I'm not aware of any case law that says it's legal or illegal, but this is pretty close, and I'm okay with granting an extension as opposed to making file a new application, which is the alternative.
John Luss, Commissioner, I'm of the same mind, Chuck.
Marcy or Joe, any comments?
No, I also agree. It's the administrative burden of trying to create a new application. It's not.
Yeah.
It's just the effort to effect is just not there.
Marcy Pelosi. Am I on? Am I
Yes,
unmuted?
you're.
I don't take an objection in giving them the extension. It seems minimal.
Okay, with that said, does someone want to make a motion to approve the 5-year extension for the 612 Business Park Drive? And that would run till what date? It's December 4, 20.
Robert Harrington, it would run to December 4, 2024.
Okay, so does someone make a motion to grant the 5-year extension that would run to December 4, 2024 for the special exception approved for the 612 Business Park Drive application?
Vayuso makes the motion.
Motion made by Joe Vayuso. Is there a second?
Second by Marcy Pelosi.
Chuck Anders, Chair. Marcy makes a second. Any further discussion? If not, we'll go through the votes. John Lust.
John Lust, Commissioner, affirmative.
Joe Chadwick.
Joe Chadwick in the affirmative.
Joe Vayuso.
Joe Vayuso approved.
Marcy.
Marcy Pelosi approved.
Chuck Anders also approved. So congratulations, Bob. Somehow you made it. I don't know. You worked your magic. So.
Robert Harrington, may I just make one comment before you sign off?
Certainly.
This is to the commission members as a whole. retiring on its face seems really great, but it's also bittersweet. I've got a lot of pleasant memories. I've had a really good run for almost 41 years of practice. I have enjoyed working with all of the commission members and all of your staff and all of the people in the town hall, and have never been treated with anything but the highest degree of courtesy and respect. And I thank you very much for giving me that experience and that memory to take away from all of this. Thank you.
Chuck Andrews, Chair. Well, thank you. And I don't know how many countless years. I mean, certainly the ZBA. You were the ZBA. That's what I thought of. The guy for so many years. So you know what it's like to give up your whatever Tuesday nights twice a month, and you're not making big bucks from it. So we certainly appreciate all that you've given to the town.
Thank you.
Harry Smith, Town Planner. Again, Bob, it's been a pleasure working with you through the years I've been here as town staff too. So thank you again.
Robert Harrington. Thank you, Harry. Thank you all.
Great. Okay, then planner's report for other business. Harry.
Town Planner Harry Smith again for the record. Caitlin and I have both been noting with interest the discussion that has been occurring on the Connecticut chapter of the American Planning Association website. It's a listserv. And it was an idea, actually, I think Kate saw in a magazine article, and there's been some national discussion about how to, as part of coping with COVID and hopefully reopening a little bit, facilitate and support restaurants, which are, as far as I understand it, probably going to open with a very reduced seating capacity. And one of the ideas that's been floated is to find a way to allow these restaurants, with the understanding that their parking demand is going to be much less, to use some of their unused parking capacity for outdoor dining. This would be a way to utilize their kitchen and staff more efficiently, promote their business, and allow them to, frankly, make some extra money to try to recoup the losses. There are a few things that come into play here. We would probably need to modify the zoning regulations. I've been in touch with the fire marshal and the East Shore Health District, and they are both looking at it from their perspective. And again, it's an evolving situation. The discussion, I think, is also taking place at the Connecticut Bar Association, is my understanding. And there may be participation with the governor's office, and an executive order may be issued that would allow possibly a regulatory change with a little more streamlined process. So again, all this is in flux, but I just wanted to bring it up to your attention as a commission and frankly take your temperature, see if you would support doing something like this before we spend a whole lot more time on it.
Chuck Andrews, Chair. Thanks, Harry. So we understand the issue that it looks like May 20th, you may get to reopen outdoor seating for restaurants. So what if they put it in the parking lot? It violates zoning. So Harry's trying to get a flavor. Would we be okay with some sort of suspension of zoning regulations on a temporary basis so that these restaurants or other, I think it's mainly restaurants, could operate?
Yeah, it might be one of the breweries too. I don't know. We'd have to look at that too. But, we'd certainly be bringing whatever, would have to be something, unless the executive order blanketly allows it or something, but I don't think it's going to take that form. I think it would be something that would be subject to the discretion of the commission in some fashion. So.
So in some sort of streamlined fashion. So maybe they could go through Harry, something, you'd allow it for 60 days or something until we get back, or something like that. I don't know. So that's, you're trying to draw our temperature. I'm thinking, sure. Obviously public health safety issues, whatever, but I'm not gonna, but otherwise, I love to see the details, but my sentiment is, we want to help the local businesses, of course. What's everyone else think?
It's Joe if I use, I think we should do whatever we can, especially it's gonna be on a temporary situation, because it's only during good weather. I mean, you're not gonna have outside seating in the month of January. So at best, here we come, you know, we're talking maybe 3 months, 4 months at best, till we get to the 1st of October. After that, it's gonna get, the weather's gonna get too cold for that kind of situation. I think we should try to help it wherever possible, at least for the next few months.
Marcy Paluzzi. I think it's just important that whatever the area is that the restaurants choose, that they, you know, rope it off or provide some kind of barrier of sorts so that there's a little bit of separation between the aisleway of moving traffic and, you know, where they're going to have seating. And I don't know how you would enforce that. And I think a lot of it's common sense, but, you know, maybe just a little bit of language that would say, you know, allowable temporarily with, you know, some level of separate, you know, something put there to separate from moving aisleways or parking aisleways or something. People can differentiate.
John Lusk, Commissioner, I kind of agree with Marcy. I think there's got to be a little bit of oversight. I definitely think we should do something, yes. But maybe it's something they could hand draw a plan and run it by, you know, staff at the town hall.
Sure.
Yeah, Joe Chadwick speaking. I think this is going to be so situational that you want to leave the broadest possible avenue for people to innovate. Not expect them throwing tablecloths over somebody's hood. Then again, why not? I mean, it's like, you know, people thought car hops were ridiculous, you know, back in the 50s. Yeah, you can easily see a few, you know, a few big planters, and the logistics of this to make a quality ambient eating space really needs to come from whoever it is who has the restaurant. I think the life, health, safety, and stuff issues are going to be pretty obvious once they get there. We're not going to be driving through the dining unless they put the waitresses on motor scooters.
Yeah, Chuck Anders, Chair. Yeah, part of the issue is that, you know, you got to send it to the Regional Planning Commission 35 days in advance. You got to have a public hearing. I mean, technically, if you just went through the amendment process, it just takes a long time, and that's certainly would want to streamline things. So,
Harry Smith, Town Planner. I understand the executive order possibly may address some of that. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So, Harry, we've given you your sentiment, right?
Yes, I have direction. Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay. Anything else?
I don't think there's anything at the top of my head at the moment. Let's see, I don't know if I mentioned there is an inland wetlands application for a proposed development that you saw as an informal, which is the Days Inn property, which Bob Smith and MetroStar Properties is looking at. So they're proceeding with that. So that will probably get to us in a couple of months if it keeps moving, which I'm assuming it will. And there are, you know, several other things in the hopper out there perking along. So it's going to be a busy season despite the downturn that seems to be occurring.
Great. Okay.
Caitlin, do you have anything else to add?
No, Caitlin Piazza, Assistant Town Planner. No, but I think I should mention, just for the record, we've had a hand up from the public concerning a discussion item. And I don't know procedurally how you'd like to handle that.
I think probably talking about Mr. Cook, who had the request that was received on the correspondence. So I don't know what your thoughts are, Chuck, but my understanding was you discussed how you might want to proceed with addressing the request. And it really wasn't a discussion about the topic. It was just procedurally how you're going to go about doing it. So the discussion was a request to have a discussion at a future meeting. That was the...
Right. Yeah, we're trying to give some directions as to those three things. Does Wayne, does he want Wayne, can you, does he have a question? If he's right here, sure, go ahead, Wayne, what do you got? You can.
Yeah. First of all, I thought I was going to be able to speak to my letter briefly. In regard to the three things, Chuck, that you mentioned, first of all, nobody's going to talk about the court case because that's inappropriate across the board. This is going to be strictly regarding the east side of town. Obviously, you know what's going on is the west side of town in terms of the lawsuit or the appeal. So that's out of the question. As far as the we goes, well, I refer to we meaning my family. Now, whether or not somebody else wants to come in and join us, that's up to them. But I meant we as my family. And then I think the second one you mentioned was, well, you got to bring a specific project. Well, not really. I mean, let's be honest with each other. You know, what goes on up there? He said, well, you know, your request is kind of vague. That whole area is kind of vague. I mean, you know, I don't know what the town wants to do up there. You know, I don't have to tell you about Costco, but, you know, the way the town plan is now, you know, it's possible that there could be residential. It's possible it could be perhaps some sort of commercial. I don't think Costco is coming back. And then it could be, obviously, you know, industrial. So it's wide open. And what I want to do is come in just informally and say, okay, folks, what do you think we can do up there? I mean, it's a large parcel, not just ours, but the others associated with it, the one on the corner. You know, we need some direction because let's be further honest. Whatever someone wants to propose is not cheap. I mean, the Costco application cost $4 million between Weber and Costco itself. So who's going to come in and develop anything if they got to plop down $1 million, $2 million just to hear if you guys say, yeah, well, that's a pretty good idea, or no, that's not going to happen. I just want to get some direction. I mean, some vision. I mean, Marcy, to her credit, has always said that that should be a node. Well, what does that mean? What's your vision of a node? Because other people, you know, may differ from yours or Marcy's concept of what a node is. So, you know, you got to send us away with some idea of what's going to fly here.
Well, okay, Wayne. I appreciate that, your clarification. Here's my suggestion: that I think it would be helpful to know is your team still together? I mean, are you still working, or is it just you, or whatever? I don't know. That kind of makes a difference. So I don't know if you've approached them or whatever. That would be interesting. But sure, I mean, the reality is the way things work is, I mean, private development kind of shapes things, and it's specific developers that come in. You saw what happened. I mean, you've been here the whole meeting. You saw what happened tonight. Someone's got a vision for the Anchor Wharf area, and so they come in with a plan, so we give them some reaction. I mean, it sounds like you're asking us to design something.
No,
I don't know, but I mean, sure.
No.
And what good is it? I mean, because really, unless there's someone willing to come up with a project to spend the money, we can.
No, I'm asking for concepts. I'm asking for a vision. You know, what's your vision for that place? I'm not asking you to design a project. I mean, do you see it? I remember at one point, Chuck, let's be candid. You said, well, I don't really want to see residential up there. Well,
that's correct. That's correct. I've said that. Yes.
I know.
I stand by that. Yeah.
Then well, over 55 is a very viable use, you know, particularly with the population obviously becoming more and more over 55. So what kind of comment, you know, is that sending towards any developer that has aspirations towards an over 55 project when the chairman says, well, I don't really want to see that?
Harry Smith, town planner. I mean, rather than sort of wade into the discussion tonight,
right? Yeah.
Possibly given the hour, maybe I should suggest scheduling it for a future meeting. I will pull together some information from the Plan of Conservation Development. One question I do not have a completely clear answer to at this point is, what is the status of the PDD? So I think that would weigh in as well. So I mean, those are, rather than talk about it now, I just want to get more information so that I can bring it to the commission to help inform the discussion. And if there's anything you want to put together in writing, Wayne, about what you might like to cover, that I think would be helpful too.
This is about, one last thing, I know you guys are tired. This is about vision. What's your vision? I mean, people had a vision with Costco, and not going to get into it. But what's your vision up there? Because, you know, there's 45 acres that I'd like to see something done with before I'm in Center Cemetery. And, you know, I think a lot of us would. So where do we go? We're open. We're always open to suggestions. So I'll work with Harry on this.
Okay. Okay, Wayne, thank you. And so work with Harry and we'll set something up.
All right. Thank you very much.
You bet.
Right.
Thank you.
Anyone got anything else? If not, someone want to make a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion, Marcy Paluzzi, make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, Marcy made the motion. Is there a second?
Joe seconds.
Joe second. We'll roll through the list. John, are you in favor of the motion to adjourn?
Affirmative. John Lust, affirmative.
Joe Chadwick?
Joe Chadwick, affirmative.
Joe Vayuso?
Joe Vayuso, affirmative.
Marcy?
Marcy Paluzzi, affirmative.
Chuck Andrus, also affirmative. So everyone, thank you and good night.
All right.
Good night.
This program was brought to you in part through the support of the Town of Brantford. Watch town meetings and other videos on demand at brantfordtv.org.